and I forget what his name was, his or her name. They kept switching. We didn't always get the same guy showing up.
Oh, really? Yeah, the boys had Alvin, and then Brooklyn has a new one named Skittles.
There was some guy on Shark Tank that had like a mensch on a shelf. I think he got a deal, in fact.
That's
Mensch on the bench. Yeah, Dina just said mensch on the bench.
Yeah.
Yep.
I wonder how I've always wondered if wanted to see like a tracking episode that not just shows who was on, but like followed up and didn't give you the Shark Tank Rosie one, but like actually found out what happened.
Exactly. That would be cool. Yeah.
The number of deals I personally know that got signed on the show but never made it to a deal. When it's one thing to say yes to a deal, but then when you get the terms from the
contract and everything, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool. Well, it's 12 o'clock. I think since we unlocked it, people are just logging in. So start welcoming everyone. Thank you, everyone, for showing up to episode part deux. Is it deux? Part deux. Part two. Deux in French. Accent. Deux. Thank you again for showing up. We're excited. Seth's here in South Florida with us, hanging outside of his backyard. Jason's back in LA where I was last week. So we're super stoked to have you guys. We have some good content, but we're just going to wait a few more minutes to get more people hopping in. Make sure you put some of your questions in chat and then let us know that you can hear us. I think Walter was nice enough to already say that everything looked good on his end, but just make sure you can hear and see us. We will be recording and sending us through email and social media. So if you don't get it from us, you might get it on Seth's side or Jason's side. But welcome all of you. Hey, heads up. Cool. We're good. But make sure you guys have some questions. We're going to go over some topics that we didn't have time to go over last time. Hope you guys had a good time. Scott Schramm. You know what? It's probably not appropriate, but I was watching something with Yvette. Do you know that the thumbs up doesn't actually mean thumbs up? Or is it, I think it's 2 thumbs up in a text message actually means something really bad?
I can only imagine, man.
Are we now at the point where I remember like in high school when teachers would say or do stupid things and you'd be like, that had a double entendre. Are we now doing those double entendres and being laughed at?
But I don't think we even know we're doing double entendres, right?
No, the teachers didn't either, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the issue. Like the kids know, right? But we don't, right? We're just parents like giving thumbs up and stuff.
Thanks, Walter.
There was one that said that the prayer emoji. Somebody said that was the high five emoji, right? And I'm like, no way. I'm like, when people like pass away and stuff, I'm giving high fives and stuff. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, don't tell me I got that wrong, man, all this time. Yeah.
Yeah. Kevin Hart had a really good new series on Netflix, and he was talking about a buddy and his text messaging, and he was using a lot of the new emojis that a lot of the millennials and the new Gen Zs are using, and he thought he was saying something completely different, but he was having a whole different conversation. It was hilarious. You guys gotta check it out. So my branding and marketing manager is like, don't start any later than 12:05. Everybody's logging in already, so I don't have to unlock, so we're already on. So, all right, thank you, everybody, for joining. It is December 1st. Wow, has this year passed by so quickly. Hopefully, everyone's been blessed and, haven't been too sick or lost anybody. So, if you have, our hearts go out to you and, continue to be safe and responsible. Thank you again for joining us on episode 2. I'm so excited to once again introduce my MF and friend Jason Hennessy and set price to the show SEO Happy Hour, and you're learning from some of the countries lead experts in legal marketing, content marketing, and SEO. So make sure you guys have your questions and you can hear us. So what's up, guys? Outside of texting emojis, what's been going on? What have we seen in 2020 with your clients and, you know, business overall?
You know, it's in some ways it's been sort of a continuous focus, like we talked about on the last show, right? We're seeing algorithm updates that have rewarded what I'll call good behavior, you know, solid content, solid links, and with the exception of that one crazy night where they decided to just scramble everything because they could, you know, we've seen stuff in the right direction. I think the elephant in the room is probably LSA. And that's more has happened with that since we last spoke than just about anything else. Jason?
Yeah. Yeah, same thing. You know, like we are seeing a lot of fluctuations happening in the SERPs. I think, you know, 10 years ago, you know, Seth, if you or I were sitting at a Starbucks drinking our soy lattes, our iced soy lattes.
I think I got a commission on that. I think I got you hooked a number of years ago.
Yeah, you know, I don't think we would be really spending too much time talking about like user and behavior signals, you know, and I think that's been a big shift. You know, once you make it to the first page of Google, yeah, links count, but, you know, Google's spending a lot more emphasis on just kind of the behavior signals too. And I think we can maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. And I think if we're doing the future casting, you know, looking at 2021, user experience, as Jason just alluded to, I think is going to be is key. Like we've always looked at it because we want people to, you know, like our content and call, and you want page on time. That's not a, you know, everybody knows that. But the idea is that Google is starting to look further and deeper into that as a ranking factor. At least they're outwardly telling us that's what's coming.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's funny because yesterday I seen Barry Schwartz. He was a post. You probably saw this too, where they actually, after like 20 years of doing this, are like, yeah, John Mueller said that anchor text is a ranking signal, right? So for those that are watching, like anchor text, there was a case study many years ago that was around for a long time. If you ever did a Google search, click here. The Adobe Acrobat Reader page would show up, right? Because so many people would be like, hey, if you don't have Adobe, click here to download Adobe, right? And so when you go to that Adobe page, nowhere on the page does it say anything about click here, right? It's just because so many sites, you know, in the footers or on pages, passing page rank to the page, all containing the blue underline link, which is called anchor text that says click here to that page, was the biggest evidence that anchor text was a ranking signal back in those days. But yeah, it was interesting to see that John Mueller came out with it yesterday.
Right. And so for years, you know, when people, you know, there was a time when you could sort of abuse it, and then maybe 5% of your text could be that way. And then as Google wanted a normal experience, many people have thinned it out more and more, where, like, for instance, for lawyers, the name of your firm is probably your most likely anchor text, but it still is a factor. And the more, I think we may have talked about this a little bit on the last show. If we didn't, we should have, you know, the fact that there are times when you get so clean in order to make sure that you're there forever, that mixing it up, what we call dirty anchor text, where it might be the name of your firm with some keywords, but something, you don't, you know, if every one of your anchor text is name of city, injury lawyer, that's going to cause you trouble. But if everything is just the name of your firm, without you're giving up the opportunity to sort of give Google that extra indication, and sort of, it's how do you keep it real while at the same time not forgetting that this is a ranking factor, as they've just, you know, finally confirmed.
Yep, completely agree. Pretty fascinating stuff.
Well, and I think that it goes to what we sort of mentioned a moment ago, which is Google saying, hey, this is what's coming up in 2021. And I think one of the hardest things as SEOs that Jason and I bemoan, and, you know, Alex, we've talked about this over the years, is that Google will tell you one thing, but that may or may not be true. It's sort of like dealing with my mother-in-law, and that, like, sometimes it's right, and sometimes it's because she wants it done, but it's not actually a ranking factor. And so we see that sort of part of, I think, the challenge of SEOs is to figure out, okay, they're saying this, do they really mean it? So an example of when they really meant it was they told us for a long time back in the day when I first met Jason that spammy links were bad. And they said, you know, they're really bad, and nothing happened. Then all of a sudden, boom, anybody with them got pounded. Whether or not we're going to see that again, for example, with spammy business names. Keyword stuff, business names. Spam still works there really well. Is that going to be an area that gets swiped back? And so we're hearing a lot about on-page experience being the updates in 2021. Is that because they are really going to do something, or is that because they want us to start focusing on that? And if they do that, they know that the lion's share of SEOs will push in that direction.
Sure. Yep. No, I completely agree. What were you going to say, Alex?
So I wanted, for some of the people on here are not as knowledgeable about anchor text. So I'd like to just give a brief sky overview of what you're using it, how you're using it, how it should be best used, and on both internal and external use, right? So if you're looking on page, what is the best scenario for using anchor text, and what would you be linking to?
So again, as I explained, anchor text is very simple, right? If you go to like Wikipedia, right, you see all these like underlying links that go to like a preceding page. So if you're on the baseball page for Wikipedia, there's an infield like link, there's an outfield link, there's a catcher link, right? So what that does is that tells Google, what the preceding page, the relevance to the preceding page. And it could be a blessing and it could be a curse depending on how you use it. And I've seen so many people that just basically hire bloggers and writers, and they just kind of give them, free reign to just kind of post content and just link to whatever they want, right? And so like a classic example is if, let's just say you have a personal injury page and you have a car accident page in a city, and your blogger is linking to your car accident page using the anchor text personal injury, right? Like you're sending wrong signals to Google and you're confusing Google. And so, you might be pushing down your car accident page as a result of that. I see stuff like that.
Right. And so basically it's, just to pick up even back one step further to answer Alex's question, like it's the words that are as Jason said, it's the words that you're using that then the link comes to your website. And that if you get let's say the Washington Post or New York Times does a story on you, you're lucky enough to get a link. When you get that link, they're not going to ask you what you want. They're just going to put, Seth Price, a partner at Price Benowitz, or Jason Hennessy, founder of Hennessy Consult, whatever it is. And that's why the click here was so powerful, because every time they have all those links in the Adobe Acrobat example. So what it comes down to is when you do get the ability to ask for some specific words to be included, it's one of those things that those words are very helpful and can be very powerful if you have, let's say, a dog bite page, using that as a very specific thing. So Google says, okay, I see the URL has dog bite in it, nameaffirm.com/dog bite. It has a title tag, and now the votes coming in aren't just links to the firm, but they have the word dog bite. So CNN, that did a story on dog bites, is linking in. If you were lucky enough to get the words dog bite as part of it, they don't play that game. They just give you your name in if you're lucky, right? So the question is, when you have a blog, let's say you do a guest blog post, assuming that it's in a good neighborhood and a good space, you have a decision to make, and SEO spend way too much time thinking about this. Should it just be a super clean anchor text, which is the name of your firm or you as the author, or, if you were somehow to be able to brand yourself as, Alex Valencia, dog bite lawyer, that the fact that those words are part of your title is a positive signal to say to Google, hey, not only is there a page about this with the right URL and the right title tag, and then not only is there a link coming in with authority, but that authoritative link is signaling, and that is really powerful. But if all of your links have dog bite, Google knows that's not natural and that you're manipulating it, and they'll hit you down. So it's like not being too greedy, but at the same time, making sure that you do enough to signal what's going on that page.
Yeah, there's a threshold that you have to kind of follow. And, some people don't follow it, like ideally, like Seth was saying, most people have natural links, right? So they call those naked URL links, right? That's where people just link to your homepage using www. Or your branded search terms, right? That's natural, right? Most of your links, anywhere from 7 to 10% of your link equity should probably contain either, the naked links or your branded stuff. And then dog bite should be like 2%, right? 1% for a car accident, right? You have to kind of monitor that stuff. Otherwise you can get algorithmically filtered or even worse, penalized.
Right. And a lot of it, look, Google has so much to worry about. We're pimples to them. Part of the reason I think that they haven't gotten rid of local spam, which we talked about last time, is the fact they just don't care. It's such a large world, and this is such the number of people spamming in the legal space is so small compared to all the other local searches they have. That said, those algorithms are unforgiving. And I had an event the other day where a bunch of people liked something that I did, and I got a bunch of positive reviews, and it triggered something. And you could see, like, okay, 8 reviews in too short a period of time, bad thing. Yeah, I saw a client who had 5 offices, and some one person reviewed all 5 offices from the same personal account. That hit something. I know 2 is fine.
Oh, yeah.
Is 3 okay, 4 okay? But there is a point where Google sees something. So just like with the percentage of anchor text, as I said, at 1.5% was good. And if you went 1% over 5%, it would hit you down. I saw it to 1%. It is now likely, I'm talking about from a given page of density of keywords, not anchor text, sorry. But I'm sure there is another algorithm where if your percentage of anchor text goes too high, it will hit something and slap you down.
100%. And some of that stuff you control, and some of that stuff you don't control, right? The guy that left a review on all 5, places. One would think that somebody asked that person to do that, right? I don't think anybody is just going to wake up on a Monday morning like, oh yeah, today I forgot to review price benefits in all 5 of their locations, right?
No, and that's a really good point. This was for a client, and that, and I think that's an example where Google is sort of simulating reality. You may love 2 offices of something, but for you to review 5 Jiffy Lubes in a day, not that likely. Or if it is, there's some ulterior motive. They're trying to keep it real, so to speak. And the only way they can do it in mass is to have sort of algorithmic triggers that take place if you get greedy or try to do something non-natural.
I'm curious. So, personal injury, I can see it's easier to kind of get like reviews, but how do you get somebody that got a DUI to kind of leave a review?
That's a whole conversation. Like, I've been living it for years, right? We got you're right. When you give somebody
at the DUI conference, right? Yeah.
You give somebody a check, they're jumping up and down to tell the world,
right?
They get a check, but that's where, and that is why, that is in a unique space, in the sense there are a number of these things, right? The reason you hire a lawyer is to not tell the world, sometimes family members, sometimes a review without any details. But the irony is it's the DUI terms that are going to, that the algorithm is dying for in the reviews. They're clearly pushing you to have a keyword rich review. And I think that Google has made its stand, to eliminate we talked about on, I think, the last call we had gateway pages. How they ban those, so that for those of you that don't know, you might have a page on your website that says, hey, how is the service at whatever organization or firm you have? And if it was 4 or 5 stars, it pushes you to a Google review. Google said, no, we want to see a transparent curve, like a bell curve, of reviews that's more natural. And if only the good people are allowed or pushed to leave it, that's not a good thing. So the irony, this is one of my favorite stories, was Podium is one of those companies, one of 5 or 6 like Gather Up and, Bird Eye, that was doing this. And that all of a sudden they realized, oh, wow, that's our company. That's a portfolio Google company. And they were doing gateway pages. And they were like the first ones that had to knock it out because that's how they made their money, right? Like, who wants a review?
You filter the review, right? Yeah, you filter it. Right, yeah.
Well, you filter it in the sense that you're not asking for it. You're not, you're filtering internally. But Google said, hey, if you have those gateway pages on your site, we're going to penalize you. Are they really going to? I don't know, but I'm not taking any chances. So we were getting ready to build those because we're like, that seems genius. You might do it on your own email system, but which a lot of these guys have done. But if you do it on your site itself and Google's crawling it, they're like, no, that's no good. We don't want that.
Correct. Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying is, like sometimes they filter by which you send an email saying, hey, how did you like our services? Right. And it's like 0 to 5. Right. And if they rate 4 or 5, you send them over to if they rate 1, 2, or 3, whatever, you're kind of sending them a different message to leave it like locally, right?
It's so fun. I was interviewing Jim Boykin the other day, one of the sort of icons in the SEO space, non-legal, and he still uses a Yahoo account. He wants Google to have no idea what he's doing. So
wow.
I don't know. I know when I have sensitive stuff, I'll use Facebook Messenger. Like, there's certain things that, Google knows all, but if I can sort of try to prevent some stuff going there, maybe.
Google is listening right now.
Interesting guy, Jim. So let's segue into 2020's local. How did local change, and what can we be doing differently? What can law firms be doing differently? Because we know about the extra offices, the non-actual location, kind of like your leased office buildings, and those are probably all closed down now because of COVID. So what's the situation there?
That's the greatest irony, Jason. So like for years, Google didn't want the shared offices. In the last 12 months, they really hammered it pretty badly pre-COVID. Right? They took people out right and wrongly. They took a broad swath and did it. The irony is, at least in the major metropolitan areas, everybody's virtual. So they're still slamming them. But what they're trying to do, the irony is they care about that for spam, but they really haven't addressed everything else. I think that would be, to me, it's the biggest change was going after local offices and the announcement that reviews matter. It's not a change, but a proclamation. But to me, the headline is it's now 2021. They've had all this time, and local spam is still infiltrating the world and really causing problems in many markets. And they just don't seem to be putting the resources they could easily use to shut it down.
Totally. Yeah. And I think, their local algorithms are kind of all jaded right now too, because some of the behavior signals, right? Whether or not people believe it or not, or whatever, you kind of speculate, but there is a button that says click directions, right? And then Google will tell you, how often somebody's at the place or whatever else, right? So like, if nobody's clicking directions to restaurants right now, if nobody's like spending time in the restaurant, their algorithms are all kind of wacky, you know what I mean? But that's the same for law firms. While a lot of people don't, click directions as frequently as you would think to a law firm, it is still a signal. And I see people that are also even trying to game that system too,
Mike Ramsey gave a great talk at MozCon a couple of years ago where he tested in a small market directions. I tried it myself. I couldn't get the same results he did. In a larger city, but and as we know, Google sometimes focuses on certain, ranking factors and others, but clearly they know in mass how many people are not just going to a site, but actually doing it. And then the question is, are you actually following those directions somewhere? Right? Sure. It's not like getting the directions, but like they, we're between Google Maps and Waze, they know exactly who's following the directions to where they're going.
Yeah. The other thing too, Alex, you said like, what's new? What are some of the trends? I think the biggest thing is photos. I think that was big this year, and I think it's going to be even bigger next year. Google has AI called Cloud Vision. It's an interesting tool. I would encourage you to go Google that now, Cloud Vision. Look at some of the photos that are in your GMB profile, and just take a screenshot of the photo and put it into that tool and see what Google semantically associates that photo with. It's brilliant. I mean, they're able to show like how confident they are if there is somebody that's smiling, if somebody's wearing a hat, if there's a cat in the background, so like that would be the biggest thing, is like taking real photos from your smartphone, from your office with the geo coordinates, right? Of things that Google can even read, like your logo, and if it says personal injury lawyers on the door, and Google's reading all of that stuff. Like I see people ranking for somewhat competitive terms in local search, and then I go and I look at their photos, and I would put like strong evidence that it has to do with their photos.
And it's so funny, I've polled that question amongst some people outside of legal SEO, and it's really divided. Some people think that photos are everything. And there are others that just think, yeah, go have fun posting them. And then the piece that I'm getting pushback on, but I'm curious to know whether it will be going forward, is the geotagging of the photos. There's a school of thought it's there. Some of the people I respect, like a Mike Blumenthal and others, think it's hogwash. But again, it's like anything else. What may not work a year and a half ago, may start working now. And I look at GMB as like, we don't really know all of those things. For instance, they said, hey, number of views wasn't a factor. I kind of ignore what they're saying. And as Jason's saying, if you see anecdotal pushes in different directions, why not try it? You resources to do it aren't great. You can't do everything, but if they give you, Jason and I have both spoken about this over the years, if they give you an opportunity with a GMB, whether it be posts, whether it be photos, like you only have so many different buttons you can push. Why not try it? It's sort of like they say marketing, half of it works. You don't know which half. I think there's a great example here. We're not certain which ones are working, but why not throw a bunch of spaghetti at the wall? Because when it works, it's so freaking awesome that, assuming that it's not a massive cost to do it and you can somehow systematize it, give it a shot and make sure that you're partaking in helping them fill up they lost the Google Plus war as a social platform. They're doing everything possible to make GMBs the destination, and not, you already see them knocking out Yelp. Yelp's in trouble as a business. They see blood, and I think they're really pushing hard to try to get this to take on significance. And I wouldn't be surprised if 3 years from now, Yelp is really not a factor or sells for pennies on the dollar, because Google is putting so much effort in forcing people to do so much work on their GMBs in competitive markets.
Yeah. And one thing that, I like to do sometimes is look outside of the legal vertical for signals. Absolutely. And right, and other, and one of the best examples is like if you do searches for things that are not all that competitive, right? Like if you do a Google search right now for guitar lessons, right, or piano lessons or ice cream shops, right, you will see that GMB has photos actually appearing in the SERPs for those queries, right? And so you'll see like, hey, it's Frank's guitar lessons, and then there's a photo of a guitar, right? Or Jen's ice cream shop, and there's a photo of some ice cream. Now, they don't do that for legal right now, but they're still using the same algorithms. And so that's just evidence to me. I just look at signals and then I come to my own conclusions. So anyway, that's why I'm just saying, you might want to put some more emphasis on your photo strategy in 2021.
And, the great minds, we've, like anything else, it's not just a one-off, right? If you do go do photos on your iPhone one day, great. But it's like, just like content, it's consistently filling the beasts. So if you, finding a methodology so that you can constantly be getting that fresh data to Google, and it's not just a set it and forget it situation. Because we're not selling guitar lessons, we're selling something with a bunch of people raising their hands wanting that visibility.
Yeah. What's the biggest mistake you find with GMB listing when you take on a client? What's the biggest mistake either another firm's done or they've done to their own GMB listing?
A biggest mistake.
They go wrong.
I think it's not just mistakes. It's sort of like first age of GMBs seems to be one of those not talked about things that's significant for starters. Reviews used to be sort of poo-pooed, but are now more and more not just of a ranking factor, but a conversion factor. I am curious to know whether the review score at some point will play more of a factor. We have not seen that to date. Remember the eyeglass situation where there was an eyeglass store in New York.
Decor my eyes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. They had like 500 one-star reviews before reviews were hip, and they were crushing it because it was the top of it. And I think that at some point that will play in. They just want content right now. But I would say it's the idea that it's not being focused on. Like, so it's the missed opportunity. It's not like, hey, you don't put photos, you're not going to rank, but it's not taking it as a relevant part of your overall local SEO strategy.
Yeah. To me, I think it's more on the side of like the user experience. When somebody leaves a negative review and that person there's a battle then that goes on. Like I've seen that. right? It's like, who do you think you are leaving this review, blah, 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 right? And then it just kind of, it's like, you see that stuff, right? You can't do that, right? Because that's the image of your firm, right? Or your company.
Well, it's the Barbara Streisand effect, right? It's
exactly.
So, yeah, I've been torn for years. I just left it alone and didn't love the responding to reviews. On TripAdvisor, they always seem very corny. Thank you so much for the great review. And then the bad ones, it's sort of like. But I think that Google has pushed us in the direction. Like, you have to start responding. I have a 24-hour rule, which is you get a bad review, it's going to happen from time to time. Hopefully not often, but when it happens, it's, in my fraternity house, we had a 10-second rule for this particularly annoying guy, where before he said something, he had to think 10 seconds. If it was still a good idea, he could say it. I feel like the 24-hour rule, you want to respond, but sleep on it. Make sure that you still have that feeling the next day. It's not worth losing your bar license. And you don't want the Barbara Streisand effect, where the response instigates something that makes it much, much worse.
So here's an offline life hack for reviews. A friend of mine told me about this. So what he did was he went out and he got a Amex card, and the name of the company is 5-star reviews, right? And so anytime he goes to the hotel, he uses, he's like, hey, this is so-and-so from 5-star reviews. I'd like to come take out your place, right? And then he shows up and he's got the credit card, right? It's, Tim with 5-star reviews.
Tim.
Listening. He knows what I'm talking about. Yeah, Tim. And then he's always getting like penthouse and free breakfast. And so there's a tip for all of you. Go get yourself a credit card that says 5-star
Tim's that guy.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, all right, let's touch. So we hit GMB. We'll finish it off in a little bit with, because there's a lot to talk about LSAs, but I want to stress also voice search and creating content around frequently asked questions. Where do you guys see the voice search? It's been like the topic for years, right? Every time the SEO for 2019, for 2020, for 2018, you got to be doing and optimizing and writing content for voice search. Right?
I love the shrug. I don't know if it came clear, but the Jason shrug sort of sums it up. It's a great topic for people in Keynote. It's not changing our world. Yes, FAQ. But like we if you write great content that answers questions, like it's not like we're seeing a massively different. It's just a way of, I think it's just search. My kids don't type searches anymore, they speak it. It hasn't changed it. They're saying and talking approximately the same way for our purposes in the legal space. Write great content that answers the frequently asked questions, you're going to get it, but it's not like it profoundly changes anything, at least from my point of view. Jason?
Yeah, so the two things that you can do proactively, Seth hit it right on the head, right? Is to format your content, is, make FAQs a large part of your strategy, right? And it's pretty obvious, right? I mean, if you go to Google and you type in a question that you think your clients are asking, right? Well, they're probably speaking it too, right? Or they will speak it. And then Google has those suggested questions, right? And then there's 3 of them. And if you click on the bottom, it'll show 3 more and then 3 more. That becomes your content strategy, right? And then as you're writing the content, you just want to basically format the content, right, with FAQs in the header tags, H1 tag, H2 tags, right? And then also then add like schema markup so that, Google can understand it and it's following the appropriate protocol. But that's really all you can really do to proactively, plan or strategize for voice search.
I guess one of the interesting things was what's going to happen with sort of if you're future casting. What am I hearing? Apple, Jason, you probably know this better than I do. Apple is talking about is dropping Yahoo Bing and like looking at their own local arena, and they have the resources to build it out if they want to. And so it'll be interesting. So historically, Yahoo Bing was a number 2. At one point, 10-15% of the market. It's dropped to nominal, if anything. And the question now is, and it's been weird because that means the people with Siri we're not getting Google results. So we spend all our time optimizing Google, and yet Siri was pulling it off Yahoo. I don't see that happening for long. I don't think Yahoo's done a great job of curating the content. And so, Apple doesn't want to be in bed with Google. And so likely we're going to see their own, maybe that's who's going to buy Yelp at the end of the day to start their local search.
Sure.
But
yeah.
something's got to give, because, Apple has so many people on mobile, with all the devices they're bringing out, that it seems that they're going to want solid search results, because, you saw, the announcement with Google now doing its own portal that, Amazon, Amazon was first to market with it. Amazon's not great for search, for local search. Siri's not great. So it's sort of like if Apple doesn't come up with a solution, it's going to give Google a road back into that market that they certainly don't want to have.
Absolutely. Yeah. But that's basically summarizes, voice search. There's not much more you could be doing for that.
Yeah, and just like both Seth and Jason touched on it, you want to be asking questions, anything with the words how, what, when, why, where. Also looking for the long tail when you're doing your research. So it's just creating that question. Google Intent will help with that too. Whenever you start typing that in, it'll give you opportunities to build out that content strategy.
Just one point of clarification on that, Alex, because, as you're doing this research, right, how to get a police report, right? When you write an answer to that question and you publish it on your website, a lot of times people will think about old school Google, right? Like, well, I don't care. Like, I don't want to rank how to get a police report when people in California are doing that search and I'm over here in Florida, right? But you'll notice, like, if you actually use a tool to change your IP address and you do that search, like how to get a police report, and you do that search in Georgia or in Atlanta, you'll see Atlanta firms ranking with that answer. If you do that search in DC, there's probably a good chance you see Price Bedouins ranking for that term, right? I'm sure you do, right? But it's, don't be scared or intimidated to write content that you think you'd be competing nationally, because Google is sophisticated enough now to understand where the IP address that somebody's doing the search versus the IP address of the firm. And well, maybe not the IP address, but where the firm is located.
Right. I think that the one of those interesting things is, we've talked about that for years, but that one of the things that's, will the police report get you monetizable traffic? Maybe, maybe not, but it does get you traffic. And one of the things we talked about last time was the sort of the touch point that TV advertisers had this huge example because of the traffic running through them from the branded searches from running those ads. One of the things for people who are not on TV that you can do is getting that huge traffic through your site as a touch point. I have a huge battle with my intake people at the law firm, because things like red light cameras and speed cameras, they get more traffic and more people coming through it than anything else. There's not a lot of good answers for it, and there's no good answer as far as legally what to do with it, but you have people searching. You have people that are more upset about their speed camera ticket than you have people facing 20 years on a drug charge. So you have people searching, and scouring the web. If you can use some of that. Now, the downside is, you have to then look at the user experience. We take the phone number off those pages. We'll put big, clear language saying we do not handle these cases. Because the last thing you want, we actually had a bad review once saying, hey, there's content about this, but it's not, they don't do this type of case. And so, but but there's a need, you're doing a civic duty if you're telling people, because to me, the advice is when Alex calls me and says, yeah, I'm driving through Maryland, I got a speed camera ticket, what should I do? I would say pay it, because there's no good legal answer. It would cost more to hire a lawyer than it would to just pay the ticket or if you fight it yourself. And so one of the things that I'm very cognizant of is you want things that bring traffic through, that give good service, but you want to be very clear that you're not, hurting your firm's ability to have the phones overwhelmed from and preventing monetizable cases getting through because of it. So there's an art to it, and if you do it too much in one direction, you will see a negative consequence. You want to make sure that it's clear. This is for information purposes. This is, you get people calling for their free consultation on a red light camera ticket, and while you want the traffic and you want to be able to tell people what the answer is, it is not something that you can actually do and make money from.
And I got another classic example of that. So like I do SEO for a site in LA, a DUI site, and doing my keyword research and looking at just analytics and trends and stuff. One of the big terms was how to see if somebody has been arrested, right? And you think, well, that would be a pretty good term, right? Because if they're looking to see if somebody got arrested, well, what's the next step? They probably need a lawyer, right? So we wrote a page. We built it out. We did some link building to it, and now it ranks #1 in the featured snippet, right? And so, man, talk about clogging up a phone. Like you said, you had to change the phone number, right? Because we were getting people calling like literally 3, 4, 5 times a day. Hi, I want to see if Johnny Smith is in jail. He's my cousin. He didn't come home last night, right? All that stuff. And so then what we did, like you said, Seth, we still ranked #1, but we totally removed the phone number. We put it in big red, like, hey, if your loved one got arrested, please call this number. But that's a classic example of where SEO could become an inefficient part of your process. For sure.
Right. And look, I'll give you an example. Like in Virginia, birth defect cases don't have a monetizable value for a lawyer because of a fund that's been set up. And so it's one of those things you can rank all day for it, and you can get, there's not a lot of competition, and it's a good SEO, touch point, but you got to be careful about how you construct it, and you can get creative. You can make that page doesn't link back to the rest of the site. I mean, there are different things you can try to do with that, but I think it can be used. You just need to balance out the pros and cons and do everything. Again, if you follow Google's idea of a good user experience, you don't want to be misleading. At the same time, you want to be able to put certain content that is relevant and helpful as an organic piece to your business. And I think that's a great example. We had the central cell block, which is essentially where people go when they're arrested in DC, and I think that probably a good tip for people in secondary markets for criminal, the local jails probably don't have much web presence, and you can very often outrank them or at least come #2 to them and get and have a lot of great information. It's just that cost benefit. Is it going to clog up your phones or create a bad user experience where somebody is misled, having that big red thing at the top saying, hey, if somebody's locked up, this is what you call, but here's what you need to know.
Sure. Yep. That's a good point. The messaging on the page.
Cool. So let's jump into LSAs and let's start explaining what it is, what it came out, what the big issue is with it recently, because I know some clients that aren't doing ads with us have been complaining about it. So I think we're going to help review that for them. But what are LSAs and how are they going to impact organic rankings?
Well, the first part is easy. I'll let Jason do that. The second part, the jury is still out, but hopefully not too badly.
Yeah, just LSA, local service ads, right? It's nothing new. I mean, they've been around for a long time, but it's just new to the personal injury space. They're the first top 3 results that you see when you do a search. Google's monetized by when people actually pick up the phone and call, so they're actually being paid for an action instead of a click. There's speculation that Google might change to a bidding system at some point.
I don't think that's speculation. They've already signaled that's happening.
Yeah, they've already.
Right now it's not really that. It's an algorithm. I think it's heavily emphasized on reviews. Because you see reviews and budget, I think is the 2 pieces. I think for that algorithm. Because yep. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's sort of a long, straight journey they have taken, right? So, Jason, they've been around for a while. The original impetus when I was out visiting Google years ago was they had a real issue. Locksmiths and home improvement were filled with fraud and bad user experiences when people Googled it. It wasn't like an Angie's List where it was vetted and there was some money or a bond. So they said, hey, we need to solve a problem. The irony is in legal, it's much less of an issue. meaning you're barred. There's a recourse short of a lead gen group, which they seem not to care about in local, but this is, you know, because of the background check that's involved. So they said we need this for non-legal, but we can make a hell of a lot of money in legal, essentially saying it's not just enough to make pay-per-click money, but we want to make pay-per-lead money, which is essentially what these are, right? You're essentially buying leads. Now, if you're doing a couple things, it is essentially a paid service. So I think that the biggest headline I can give is that short term, we are seeing a cannibalization of traditional pay-per-click. At Google Ads, or Google AdWords in the old nomenclature, we have seen those that, you know, coming down almost dollar for dollar for the money that we're spending on the LSAs. But like anything else, Jason's lived through this. We saw this with videos. Remember video billboards, Jason loved back in the day. They wanted video. They bought YouTube. They were pushing that hard. I think that right now, because it's not a bidding system, they just want the market to buy into this. We're not seeing it for every search. There have to be 3 people in a market for it to work. So if you're the only guy in a market doing it, it's not going to show. It's not showing in every search result. But what we're seeing, at least short term, is, and thankfully for SEOs, it has not been a big hit into the SEO local space. We still get our local hits. We still get our organic hits. It's really been taken out of, from what we've seen so far, from Google AdWords. That's not going to last. Google doesn't, they're doing this to make more revenue. And so by the time they start raising the rates on that, you're going to say, well, these Google calls are too expensive. Maybe I'll go back to clicks, or vice versa. The market will even out. But I'm sure at some point it is going to turn the dial, and that they are going to find a way to get more monetizable traffic to their leads and clicks and less to their free 3-pack and organic. That's my take on what's going to happen.
So for me, early, the people that were getting the biggest reward from the LSAs was like the solo practitioners that have it's just one person at a small little office. They've got like 7 5-star reviews. They've got a $5,000 per month budget, but they don't have to get 100 bar cards approved. You know what I mean? In the whole right. So they're very quick to kind of get up and populate, and you see them ranking. And then now over time, the course is starting to correct itself, because, the bigger players are starting to kind of get into that space.
And they're in. I mean, the Pinkerton background check was the frustrating part. But I think so 2 issues. One was, I think that a few people had an early in, that some people got a backdoor in, plus the little guys who get through the background check quickly, no doubt. But I think it's also a mixed bag depending on practice group. We have a lot of PI people here. That seems to be one of the better ones. But we've seen some of these areas not great. Calls are plentiful. They're getting the calls, but not monetizable calls. So that I would argue that, again, in contingency cases, got to be there. If you're doing pay-per-click, it's silly not to be pushing money there right now. Right. We do enough business at my firm that we primarily rely upon organic, because we do enough traffic from that we're satisfied. But we were like, hey, if there's going to be cheap media, you might as well spend it until the gig is up. And then at some point in the not too distant future, you're going to be getting your cases. If it costs you $1,200 or $1,500 in a case, Google knows how to get those calls to the point where you're paying that per monetizable case. I have no doubt that we're headed in that direction.
Here's the people that hurt from LSAs. The people that are actually hurting from the LSAs are a lot of these lead gen companies, right? Where you kind of piggyback off of the name of another firm, and you're able to kind of top rank, for whatever, pennies on the dollar. So instead of spending $200 per click, you're spending $15 per click to piggyback off of a branded firm, and you're getting the clicks and you're getting the phone calls. But now you've got this big, verified kind of thing right at the top of Google, where the people that play in the lead gen space can't compete.
And that's exactly what I was alluding to before, right? So that because LSAs are also new, it has the review number up to it, so it's nice, and it's had that verified check, that it sort of cannibalized the Google ads, which is where the lead gen companies were putting their ads, right? They were living off of pay-per-click and sort of arbitraging the difference between the cost per click and the cost per lead, especially with some of these tricks and lower dollar clicks using big law firm names and things like that. It's fascinating to see where that goes. To me, it's not a great user experience. You have like these sponsored at the top and then ads below. But if Google's making money, they'll hold their nose and do it for a while. I can't imagine. It seems kind of awkward to have both.
I agree.
Yeah. It's taken up a lot of real estate too. Kind of pushing the organic side down.
But it's one thing again that I've seen in the as I alluded to a moment ago, in the contingency world, in the fee for service world, it has not been the same panacea. I've always said, looking at criminal, I'm sure it's similar with family, trust and estates, people that are searching, that you want, who can afford your services, especially if it's a premium service and not the low dollar guy, are going to be looking at these the ideal candidate very often comes through the local 3-pack because they have the reviews, or through the organic further down. That I am not like that. The savvier person is used to ads at the top. And not that you don't get lucky, and not that you can't get some ROI, but it might be that 3-to-1 ROI. Whereas the organic and the local pack still is where the savvier, person who has money to spend appears to be going. From my perspective, that's what I'm seeing short term.
Yeah, they're doing more research, right?
They're doing more research. And I saw a trusted estates play where those LSAs, they were waiting, they got them. It blew up the phones, but it was not a good ROI at all. It was a bunch of crap. Versus, I'm not seeing that. If you're able to get the calls on PI, it makes money and you can get your ROI. But fee for service, it has not been that same godsend you've seen in the contingency world.
Completely agree. Yep.
Cool. Well, do we have? Appreciate that. I think those are really great answers. We had a call with Google earlier this week and kind of asking those questions specifically. So I think you guys touched on them all. Anybody have questions? We
got 10 minutes.
10 minutes. We have time for questions. I'll say hi to Paul Faust, who joined us, who's soon to be South Florida.
That's right.
Resident. What's up, Paul? Oh, okay, we got a question coming in from Adam.
So while the question's coming in, I've got a I Love SEO t-shirt here that I will give away. Your size. I've got boxes of this stuff. I'm going to be selling it.
You're not just going to send it. This is not just your way of not doing laundry and sending out the ones after.
So I will give out a I Love SEO t-shirt, either black or white, in your size, to the first person that comments with the original name of Google. What was the original name of Google before it was Google? First person to comment gets a free t-shirt.
And while you're waiting for the comments, I was going to. There was a question that just scrolled through there while you're looking for an answer.
We got an answer.
Somebody
got a winner.
Yeah,
but finish your text.
Uranus?
No, it's not Uranus. All right, so it looks like Walter Johnson is our winner. The answer is back rub. Yeah, it sounds funny, but that was the original name of Google. And so I guess if you can maybe send a DM or email Alex at, We Do Web Content? Actually, send it to me. Send it to Jason, Jason, at Hennessy.com. I'll put that in there. Send me your size, white or black, and your address, and I'll put that in the mail to you, Walter. Thank you.
A question that scrolled as we were doing this was somebody said, hey, what if you set up a relationship with another law firm and just linked back and forth in the blogs? And, that's one of those things that was done a lot back in the day. There was one large sort of legacy non-WordPress group that was big about syndicating blogs out. And for a while it worked. I don't love anything that's fully reciprocal. The link value goes down over time. The good thing is it can get you some deep links, but like anything else, I don't love it to be abused. If it's something that you do a bit of as a one-off, fine. But if you take it too far, I don't love it, although it probably won't get you penalized, but it's not a great user experience, but not a bad way to sort of sprinkle some love. But like anything else, you do it a couple times, fine, just not in mass.
Yeah, if it happens naturally, nothing to be concerned about.
It's unrelated tip I got last night. On the if you're a personal injury lawyer or a lawyer that's going after mass tort cases, and we've been doing it a lot. Jason is creating a lot of Spanish content, but the gentleman I was speaking with last night is a tort docket writer and analyst and researcher. He said the Spanish community is one of the most underserved when it comes to content, especially for mass torts. And we've been doing a hard push for Spanish content in the PI space, but in the mass tort world, Spanish content is very, very valuable. So if it's not something that you're working on, you should probably start adding that into your content strategy, both for PI and mass torts.
And there's a way to do that too. There's research how to do it from an SEO perspective, because like if you do it incorrectly, it might not work. So there is a way to do that.
So Alex, I got a question for you. What's your feeling on simply, on you built out a site in English on translating each page or the key landing pages versus having an entire separate like Spanish silo? What's your philosophy on how to leverage content in Spanish versus English?
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant strategy. It's probably the easiest strategy because you already wrote the content, right? And now you just have to get it translated. But you just have to use the rel alt lang tag to tell Google that this is the Spanish version of the page, this is the English version of the page. So there is some technical, makeup that you have to do to do that correctly. But I think that's probably the way to go. Yeah.
Do you think there's ever going to be a point where we can literally just rely upon Google Translate as that? I know it's not, it's getting there, but that's been one of those things that sort of like, how much effort do you put into it? Obviously, if you see a hole in the market, right? God bless, start writing content. But is it something that we could get our sites into, will we get to the point where our site's essentially in every language once we put it in English? Is there a way to leverage that, do you think, in the future?
I think we're far away. I don't think that's not impossible, but I don't think we will see that within the next 5 to 7 years of it being that easy.
For an automatic translate, is that what you're asking? Sorry,
yeah, the audit, like how like you have like Google Trend, like you could put a button on your website that just says Spanish and it translates it in Google Translate. The problem is that Google's not indexing that content because it is just a Google Translate, and so yes, you have a version, but it's still sloppy, right?
I know it's getting there because we got a note from my eldest son's Spanish teacher saying that, there are times when his stuff looks like it's in a, middle school level. And there's times when it looks like an advanced Spanish, linguist. Maybe he should stop using Google Translate for his answers. So I just came up with an idea. What if, using Google Translate itself as a baseline, and then, helping that rather to edit, it's always the question of editing versus building. So,
well, you know what? On part three of our, we should do part 3. We could talk about the whole world of AI content, right? I'm doing some experimentation with AI content right now, and it's kind of blown me away of how that is working so well. Not in the legal space. We're doing some experiments in other spaces, but it's crazy to see that that's working. But that's a whole nother topic, and I think that is something that's coming even before the whole Google Translate stuff.
Yeah, I did some tests there. It is pretty impressive. I tested it out on some legal pages too, just like Jason said, and it's nowhere near where it should be. It's actually very choppy and just pulling from search. But even in the SEO space, like SEO content space, it actually was doing some really good turnout.
Oh yeah, it's really, some of it's really horrible stuff, but it's Google's indexing it, and yeah.
And look, I don't have something that I have seen over the years that's really frustrating. I remember when I first started out and started experimenting with Spanish, so trying to do this in house, that and I love Alex to sort of speak to it. Every time I had a page translated into Spanish, the next person looked at that, that's terrible. Which country do you recommend to get people from so that it's not, so that you get something where there's at least a consensus that what you're translating makes sense? Because I know that if I got people from Spain, the people from Mexico didn't like it. It's people from Mexico, the people from Costa Rica didn't like it. Is there a country that's sort of the universal Spanish that would give me the best shot of giving great translation?
Florida Spanish.
Obviously, Spain is off because of their totally different dialect. I think you're safe with something from Colombia and Mexico. They don't have such a technical Spanish as Spain would, and they're very similar. It's still appropriate, right? They're not using any slang. They're not using any specific words that you wouldn't. Like, I'm born Spanish, first language speaking, and I never once imagined that injury meant lesionado, and it was just different, right? It's a whole different way of writing, typing. Just the context is totally different, so it's tough. But I would say Mexico, Colombia are not bad places. That's usually where we get our writers from, and then we have in-house editors to edit it.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's 10 o'clock, guys. I unfortunately have another call backed up to this. But man, this was fun again.
Yeah.
We got to do it again. You're going to be in Florida for about how much longer?
Yeah, we're going to until it gets warm.
Okay. So maybe we can put this on the books again for either January or February. We'll do a part 3. Yeah. This is fun. Just kind of keep it going.
We'll do our next one. Maybe we'll do AI. Yeah, we're always asking for people to send over topics, anything they want to talk. So please, I'll be in the Valencia's backyard. All right, Paul, we'll do it. Yeah, that's where Seth wanted to do it too. I'm like, all right, we'll try to figure that one out. But thank you again.
Is there a recording for this that we'll be sending out for those that?
Yeah, we're going to be sending it out by email. If you don't get it from our email, you either get it from Seth's or Jason's email. We'll also post on social. Thank you guys again for joining. Wish everyone safe, happy holidays, and awesome. Have a great day. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you, boys.
Thank you guys so much. Yeah, appreciate it. Yep. All right. Bye-bye.